And now, please welcome to the stage President and CEO of Southwest Airlines, Bob Jordan, in discussion with founder and editor of the Airline Observer, Brian Summers.
You have your own cheering section here.
Oh, we travel together.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good. All right. So
it was modest cheering, by the way,
yeah,
you could tell.
Yeah. So I've heard there's a lot of cheering at Southwest. There's a lot of culture stuff. I think we have a picture from a Halloween, not yesterday, but maybe as we put this picture up, what was your costume yesterday?
This is from last year. We were Mario Bros. This was easier. Yesterday we were Ninja Turtles. My grandkids are 3 and 6. They love Ninja Turtles. So a whole group of us, we were spray painted, airbrushed, green. And as my ears were being filled with green paint yesterday at 6 a.m., I said, is this going to be hard to get out? And the makeup artist said, oh yeah. So, and it was, but it was a lot of fun.
So what is it about this Southwest culture? I mean, this is a big deal to you guys, right? I mean, I'm just a coastal guy. I don't get all this, but your employees love this, right?
Well, the Halloween's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's just a small piece of the culture. Colleen Baird always said that she refused to define the culture because then it was locked in forever.
Yeah.
And not violating that, I always like to say that to me the culture is easy because it's all our people. Everything starts with the people at Southwest Airlines. We strive to hire people who are just nice. They are low ego, they are humble, and above all, they seek to look to serve others before they serve themselves. That's the heart of Southwest Airlines. That's why Herb always said, happy employees yield happy customers, yield happy shareholders.
All right, great. All that said, I got to ask you about the margin gap.
Yes, sir.
You guys made money over the summer, but it was not nearly as much money as, say, Delta and United. What happened this summer? Why were things a little bit more slow for you guys?
Well, we had a really good second quarter. We had records, and we had a great third quarter. Profits were down year over year, but if you look at the demand for Southwest Airlines generally, you start there. We had a record operating revenue. We had record passengers. We had record new members in our Rapid Rewards loyalty program. We had record Rapid Rewards remuneration or bookings and revenue on the card. We had record ancillary revenue. So the demand for Southwest Airlines is really strong. If you look at the holiday period this year, we are already booked ahead of where we were last year, as an example. What's going on, I think, is fairly simple. Well, nothing simple in the airline industry. I do think the carriers that are exposed to long-haul international and premium are seeing an outperformance in that space. I believe those two are up 35 to 40% year over year. Will that persist? We will see. I'm focused on Southwest Airlines. What we need to do are really two things. The demand trends have changed. Business is steady, but business travel is still down about 10 to 15% below 2019 levels. And we restored our network, which I'm very proud of. We're the first airline to get all our aircraft back in the year, network restored to 2019, but we planned on business fully restoring, and we're not there. Second, the leisure trends, which were very strong last year, especially domestic, are still very strong, but they have come back to normal, especially as you think about close-in demand. So what all that means is the network that we planned a year ago for right now is not necessarily completely aligned with the demand trends that we see right now, which is why you've seen us talking about restructuring the network in the first quarter of next year, and that'll add about $500 to $600 million in operating profits. That is our forecast. And we just announced at earnings that we're going to take first quarter capacity in January and February down about 5 points each because those shoulder periods are tougher without business travel. And we're going to take the back half of the year down modestly. So our seats the second half of next year will actually be flat to down as compared to 2023. And then last, the second big task in front of us is we've hired a lot of folks to come out of the pandemic. And now it's time to wring out efficiency, productivity, and we're seeing efficiency gains now in every department. And there's work to do to get that back to 2019, 2018 levels. but we will make progress there in 24. We're already making progress today. But those are the two reasons in my mind. You've got to work on efficiency. You've got to get your network to what the current demand trends look like. And then last, we're still working on it, but every airline, Southwest included, is seeing labor rate and general inflation pressures. We have a couple of contracts left to wrap up, but there'll be time, like there always is, to adapt to that higher cost structure.
Great. So I compared you to Delta and United, and I understand that they have different models than you. Another airline that had a pretty good quarter was Alaska Airlines, right? They're basically all 737 operator. They fly domestic mostly, but they have one difference, and I think I counted, they said it 26 times on their earnings call. Premium, 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 premium. They sell a premium economy section, they sell a first class section, and they were arguing that that is their major differentiator right now. You see these trends, you don't have those products to sell. What do you make of this? Is this just a fleeting thing, or are you looking at maybe adding revenue?
There are big macro trends that occur in the industry, and it's hard to extrapolate what's happened for months to years. We've seen patterns before. I'm not arguing that this won't stick, but I am telling you that if you go back over the long history of the airline industry, you know this. There's been a move to premium. There's seats in, seats out, seats in, seats out as an example. So you just have to understand whether how those trends play out for an extended period of time. There's no doubt that premium and again long-haul international are seeing outsized benefits today, just like domestic leisure was seeing an outside benefit 18 months, 12 months ago. We have continued to diversify our revenue significantly at Southwest Airlines. The amount of revenue that comes through ancillary products, the amount of revenue that comes through the Rapid Rewards program and remuneration on the card growth have all moved faster than sort of your traditional seat revenue. So our revenue diversification is working. Now, that wasn't your question. Your question was, what about premium? And I would just say this, Southwest always adapts as needed. When I started here 36 years ago, I was told we would never go into big cities, we would never have a loyalty program, we would never change our boarding, we would never have tiers, on and on and on. And you look at the airline today and we do all of those things because customers' expectations and needs changed over time. If we see that, and I get asked as an example, I get asked the seating question all the time. What about open seating versus assigned seating? Different kinds of boarding. If we see that our customer demand, which is where everything starts, what do our customers want? If we see that customer expectations change, and it's very clear that we need to adapt something, including the way seating in the cabin works, we would look at that. There's nothing underway. There's no story here. There's nothing underway. My point is that you have to keep up with your customers' expectations and needs. Otherwise, at some point, you don't have a business. And so, of course, we would do that.
All right. So I understand, like, it's the most important thing for any business is to listen to the customers. But I also think back to covering JetBlue's Mint, right? And what they explained to people like me at the time was, you had this low-cost airline, but the costs kept going up. And in that sort of situation, you have a couple of choices. You can be fanatical about costs and try to get them down, 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 which I think that you're doing. Or you can say, look, we need more revenue. And so Mint came out of this idea that the CASM was going up and the RASM had to go up. Is there anything to that? Like, you just got to get the revenue up regardless of what customers say they want?
We all have to work. Obviously, I'm focused on Southwest, but we all have to work both sides of the profit equation constantly. You have to work costs and you have to work revenue production. What I love is that we've always had a great relative cost position, and we actually came out of the pandemic with our relative cost position both to the ULCCs below and the legacies above, and a better position than when we entered the pandemic. We came out with the strongest balance sheet. We came out with significantly more cash than debt, so net cash, which I'm very, very proud of. But that's where I was going with both adapting the network and working on efficiency. You must work the cost side of the equation, which is for us, obviously we have a great deal with Boeing and access to aircraft at great pricing. But at the end of the day, most of your cost comes through being efficient. So it's all about being able to utilize the aircraft as efficiently as possible, utilize our terrific people as efficiently as possible. So you've got to work that side. But no, we've got to work on our revenue production as well. And it starts with getting the biggest component of revenue production is, does your network match as closely as possible customer demand? That is what is the biggest measure of how well you can produce revenues as an airline, which is why we're maniacal right now about getting the network restructures done to adapt to a customer demand that has changed as quickly as I have ever seen it. The demand trends really are very different than we expected a year ago, even different than we expected 6 months ago. And we all publish our schedules a year or so in advance. Which is why you're seeing us making changes close in. We're changing the first quarter. We are changing some other months in the first half of the year, and we will be changing the second half of the year to adapt to those new demand trends, because that's the best immediate way to attack the revenue side of the equation.
Great. Bob, I have to tell you, you took away my favorite business-to-business route. And when you do that to a reporter, you know we get very upset. But I do want to.
It's like politics. All things are local.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I just want to bring this up as an example because it's a way that the network has changed. So I live in Hollywood, California, near Burbank Airport, and I would fly Burbank to San Francisco.
Right.
That's really a business route, right? And that route is kaput. That route is gone. But I can now fly to Kansas City, I think, with the new schedule, and St. Louis. So, you know, is that kind of a microcosm of the changes that you're making?
Yeah, I think it maybe one aspect of the changes. When you look at business, and so business is not fully restored to 2019, a big piece of business, or a big piece of short haul is business. Those are the business routes where you have folks that are business folks that are making day trips, as an example. And if you look at the changes that we've made in the first quarter in the network, I think our short haul route percentage of total trips is moving down modestly from about 41% to about 38, 3 points. So it's not coming down dramatically, but we are adapting the level of short haul in the network. And that, again, that's primarily because of the fact that the business has not fully recovered. So unfortunately, your route is in that 3 points. But again, you've got to deploy your capacity. Capacity is the most precious commodity you have to produce revenue, and you've got to deploy that capacity as efficiently as possible against demand. If you look at the pandemic, we didn't exit any airports. In fact, we added 18 new airports, and many of those were business airports like Miami or O'Hare or Intercontinental in Houston. So we've actually added a number of business cities and business routes, but your route just happens to be, you know, Intracal is one of the areas that has recovered a little slower, so that route just happens to be a piece of that mix.
But, you know, I think it's probably just semantics, but, you know, when you stop some of these business-to-business routes, do you think of them as suspended, or do you think of this as a structural change in the U.S. airline industry, and a lot of that point-to-point stuff is just not coming back?
Again, I've been with Southwest almost 36 years. The route network is constantly changing. Yeah. Because demand is constantly changing, and we are constantly expanding our reach. Our route network is, you know, after our people, our route network is, I think, and our balance sheet, the most precious thing that we have in terms of our competitive advantage. We have a wide, deep, and comprehensive route network. But and we're all hopeful, if business ultimately restores it, you know, back to 2019 levels and beyond, you will see the route network over time shift back. But you're always optimizing the network.
Great. I know your airline is actually in pretty good shape, but let me jokingly ask you a version of the question that I asked Charles Duncan. On a scale of bad to very bad, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, how are they doing as we go into the winter?
Tuesdays and it's not bad or very bad.
Okay.
It's just relative. But what we have seen is that and you've probably heard this from many others, the peaks in terms of peak demand, the peaks are peakier, and the valleys are vallier. And I know vallier is probably not a word, but the breadth between peak days and the non-peak days and peak months and the non-peak months, that variance is more, in my mind, than I've ever seen. So, which is why you have Southwest and others working on January and February in the first quarter, because those are shoulder or off-peak months, and the days are exactly the same. My memory is the spread between a peak day and the Tuesday. Typically for us has been, call it 3 or 4 points. I believe the spread in the new January-February schedules is more like 8 or 9 points. So we have capacity that is lower on those non-peak days. Now, because a lot of that, you can't use the aircraft, you can't put an aircraft in 2 places at the same time. But our pilots and flight attendants in particular have a number of hours that we can build into their schedule. So it does allow us, by pulling down those off-peak days, to actually add more flying into the peak days, which is very helpful.
Great. And I saw an unusual fare sale recently. I don't think it's the one that's in the market right now, but it discounted very early flights in the morning and very late flights at night. Is there something that you saw in the data that said that those things are, I mean, I know they never sell as well, but there was a real softness at those times of day?
Yeah, and I don't think this is anything that's really new. If you follow the data, what we would call the shoulder or deep shoulder flights, so these are very early, very late flights, they're always the flights that are the toughest to fill. Some of that is just because of the timing. Some of that is because a flight that starts the day or a flight that ends the day is not going to have the same ability to have connections to help fill that flight, or connecting passengers to help fill that flight. So a technique that you can use, and we used in the sale that you're talking about, was to really target those flights and those periods in terms of the fare sale. Now, I know one of the common questions that's come up on every earnings call that I've read or watched or heard is, are airlines overly discounting to generate traffic? And we've gotten that question. And the shoulder sale that we were talking about is a good example. Every sale, you are capacity managing where that sale occurs, because you don't want to damage your strong and peak activity, your flights, your times of day. So you're always revenue managing where those fare sales occur and the buckets, the number of seats that you're selling. So the shoulder, that sale is just a good example of that, where it was specifically targeted to those weaker flights, particularly at the beginning and into the days. Now, one of the things that you're going to see as we continue to optimize the network is the percentage of flights that are in those deep shoulder periods is going to come in, which also helps the overall revenue and RASM production.
Thank you. I saw on the Frontier earnings call, Barry Biffle gave an oblique shout out to the 2 competitors that were discounting very heavily in their markets and hurting their sales. I don't know who those competitors would be, but
With Barry, was it an oblique shout out?
He did.
Or shout out?
He did not mention your airline's name
I know Barry.
By name. But one thing he did mention on that earnings call was just oversaturation in some Florida markets and as well as Las Vegas, and just very weak yields in those places. Are you guys seeing that as well?
If you just start at the very top, our demand is strong. I would describe business as steady. In that it's continuing to grow for us because we're actually stealing market share. We put a full court press in a few years ago to really go after business. We have a Southwest business group and department that is terrific. They put in new tools. We're now on the GDSs, and what we're seeing is market share coming our way through those activities. Leisure is very strong, and as I mentioned, our holiday bookings are actually running ahead of last year. Now, you always have pockets of the network where you can be better, and which I know I've said the network optimization about 10 times. That's why you re-optimize. That's why you think about your pricing structure. A good example of a move that we announced on the earnings call that we're making is a shift of most of the international franchise in Florida from Fort Lauderdale to Orlando. And that is really about the level of connectivity and daily flights that we have in Orlando and building up the international flight performance, because you just have so many more connecting customers there in Orlando. And that's not all of the flights, but that shift is a good example of helping the production on those flights in Florida. But no, we're seeing strong demand in Florida. We're seeing strong demand in Las Vegas.
So I know you said at the earnings call about 25 to 30% of your travelers are connecting on a daily basis. I think Andrew said that number has been pretty steady. But when you have weaker periods, you must flow more traffic through the network, right? You must have more connections?
No, not really. When you have and again, that number's been stable, 25 to 30% stable for a very, very long time between one stop and connecting customers. When the number changes is when you draw your schedule down significantly, like we did in the pandemic. And if you want to continue to serve routes and markets and cities, as you draw your flight count down, a lot of those city pairs become served through connecting traffic. As the network is, that was really the driver behind restoring the network. The goal to restore the network is it really restores that nonstop traffic that our customers want, and or options that our customers want, and it restores depth in the network. So you may have a route that had 5 frequencies a day, and during the pandemic, as we drew it down, it became 2. You have customers that want to go a certain time of day, or they may even want to take an out and back, and that loss of those couple of trips really makes a difference. So it's really about restoring the network in order to manage your connectivity count.
Great. I wanted to ask you about aircraft for a moment, and I have to warn you, like a lot of people in the audience, I've been brainwashed by Scott Kirby. They say upgauging all the time. They say bigger airplane, always lower CASM. You just ordered more than 100 737-7s. What do you see that they don't see?
I can't speak for Scott. I'm not sure about being brainwashed by Scott. I know Scott. And
it's an industry-wide phenomenon.
I think it's 2 different questions.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to speak for United, but when you have much smaller and regional aircraft, that moved to upgauging is much more, it's easier, it's much more obvious. For Southwest, we've been upgauging for a very long time. We've been moving from the NG aircraft to the MAX, and the MAX is a terrific aircraft, by the way. And it's not only lower cost, but the upgauging is very helpful. And now we're to the point where our aircraft split is roughly, I believe, 52% 800s or 8s and about 48% 700s. And so the seat mix is going to be, the split's going to be even higher in favor of the larger aircraft. And you're to the point where we probably have some routes that have an 8 or a 800 on it that really need a little bit smaller aircraft. Now, as we take the MAX 7, which is also going to be a terrific aircraft, we just got to get it certified here with Boeing, and Boeing's doing a great job with that. We will still be upgauging because you'll be moving from a 700 to a MAX 7. That upgauging will just occur at a slower pace. But and again, we have plenty of flexibility in our Boeing order to be able to take those options in either a 7 or an 8. And we'll shift to them as the market shifts.
You talked earlier about going into new markets in the pandemic. One of them is my old hometown, Chicago O'Hare. The one big airport that you cannot go into right now is DFW, but you can go in there, I think, in a couple of years. Are you going to go into DFW?
Well, step one the Dallas and Dallas-Fort Worth is our home. We've been here for over 52 years, and Dallas Love Field has been very good to us. That's the home of Southwest Airlines. We rebuilt, working with the city, the airport, and it's a wonderful facility. But it is constrained. It's constrained to 20 gates. Southwest Airlines has 18 of those gates. We're working with the city of Dallas to extend our lease. I mean, job one is to make sure that we continue to have access to those 18 gates on into the future. And we use the airport very efficiently. We have 208 daily flights on 18 gates. It's definitely our most efficient use of gates in our system, and it may be the most efficient use of gates in the United States. All that said, we're constrained. And as the Metroplex continues to grow, the constraint at Love Field becomes more and more of an issue because what you could do is more and more constrained. So we're going to continue. We're going to serve the Metroplex. I'm just telling you that. And in 2025, one of the components of the right amendment of WARA that changes is we have the ability to go to other airports beyond Love Field beginning in 2025. And we're looking at that. We have talked to DFW about a modest presence there as they look at their facilities. And but job one is making sure that we have the ability to serve the Metroplex, and we are looking at airports beyond Love Field. But again, back to Love Field, job one there is to secure access to the 18 gates that we have. But no, we're going to serve the Metroplex.
What a day that's going to be when we see a Southwest tail at DFW. How about that? All right, should we take an audience question?
Let's do it.
They can be a little rougher than me sometimes, but these are pretty tame.
Those were not rough.
No? All right. Can you give us an update on Hawaii and how that market is working for Southwest? And if you could include the short haul stuff as well, that'd be great.
You know, Hawaii has been terrific for Southwest, and it feels like we've been there a decade, and we have just been there 5 years. I love the way we approached Hawaii. It was very Southwest Airlines like. We spent 2 years before we ever flew a flight just getting to know the culture of the islands, getting to know the people, getting to know what's important on island, working with the community. That's the way we come into a market. We don't just come in with a flight. We come in wanting to be a partner and a member of the community. And we've expanded very quickly. We have over 20 daily flights into Hawaii, and then we have, I believe, 60 or so inter-island flights a day. Obviously, those markets need to continue to mature, particularly the inter-island flights, and we are very focused on that. Back to optimizing the network, and here and into 2024, a big piece of optimizing the network is getting what we call our percent of the network that is in development. So it's new markets that are typically have a lower unit revenue production than average. Getting that percentage of the network down to normal, and we're committed to doing that by the fall of next year. So Hawaii and Hawaii inter-island is a piece of that. So we are focused on the capacity there. That's a good example of where we could use the MAX 7 versus a larger aircraft. And so I'm eager to get the 7 certified. But the market's maturing. Our presence on island and our people's awareness of Southwest Airlines is rising very quickly. I was just there about a month ago, really for one purpose only, which is to go to Maui and to visit with our folks that were affected by the devastating fires and have a chance to see how they're doing, how their families are doing, talk to the governor, see what we can do to be an even better partner to Hawaii. I'm very proud of our response. I know I'm beyond the question, but I'm very proud of our response. That it was just, if you haven't been there, I mean, it's just a devastating fire, and it's devastated the community. And they're also more devastated or additionally devastated by the fact that there's so many tourism jobs that are now at risk of being lost because folks aren't visiting. So it's complicated. But we immediately took our fares way down to be able to move people on and off the island. We flew hundreds and hundreds of firefighters and others for free. We took our pet fare down to $1 to be able to move pets between the islands. And we only did $1 because it was harder to make it zero technically in a system than $1. So we did $1, and so I'm proud of our response. But no, we are in Hawaii to stay. Yeah. We will be focused on maturing the inter-island traffic, but we're not going anywhere.
All right, so I got to ask a quick follow-up here, because every other airline, what they do at the end of the day is they send their airplanes home from Hawaii to the mainland in a red eye. You guys still don't fly red eyes. Why not? And when are they coming?
I would just tell you, a way to continue to develop your revenue production is to fly your aircraft and utilize them more. In other words, you're basically producing ASMs in capacity without expending more capital. And red eyes are obviously a piece of that. In addition to customers want red eyes out of Hawaii and out of Las Vegas and other places. And we recognize that, and just stay tuned.
So I know your PR team is like right over there.
I know.
Can you just tell us for real? Are they coming?
You will see. I can't give you a date, but at some point Southwest Airlines will be doing red eyes, absolutely.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you all.